The Ask Mike Reinold Show. Helping people feel better, move better, and perform better. Before we get to the podcast, I wanted to make sure you knew about my free online course on the Introduction to Performance Therapy and Training. If you want to learn how to get started optimizing and enhancing performance, this is the course for you. Head to mikereinold.com/performance to sign up today. Hey, welcome everybody to our special live edition of the 300th episode of the Ask Mike Reinold podcast. Isn't it crazy? We got to 300, right? Isn't that?
I'm excited. I'm excited.
So, perseverance is better, it doesn't necessarily mean quality, right? Just because we've managed to do this doesn't mean anyone's actually listening, right? We just keep publishing them each week and you guys keep listening. But 300 episodes, think about that. That's 6 years, right?
Fun fact, you guys filmed the third episode the day after I started.
No way, really?
And she's 6 years old.
Fun fact.
Yeah. How about that, right?
My day's working until Adley's birthday.
That's kind of crazy to think. So 6 years of us making stuff up and you guys continuing to listen to us make things up. So we are super appreciative of all of you guys being a big part of this. And we keep saying we're going to keep doing this episode. Or we're going to keep doing this until you stop asking questions, right? We're going to keep answering questions for as long as you guys keep asking questions. So if you have a question, head to mikereinold.com, click on that podcast link, and you can ask us a question as well. You can fill out that form, anything you want to talk about, PT, sports performance, fitness, career advice, we're here for you. Now, let's introduce the crew real quick because kind of an exciting night, to be honest with you. I'm excited. But we actually have a new addition to the podcast crew tonight. So it's going to be real interesting. But I am joined as usual by Kevin Coughlin, Lenny Macrina, Lisa Lowe, Dave Tilley, Dewesh Podell, Dan Pope, and introducing for the first time, many of you may know him from Instagram already, but Jonah Monlock is joining us today. Jonah is one of our strength coaches at Champion and our director of sports science, a big initiative that we've undertaken the last couple of years, and Jonah's done a really good job with that. So hopefully we'll get Jonah on future podcasts as well. Now that you're officially invited to our Slack channel on the podcast, you're in, right? But so anyway, so we're good. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to get going in just a sec, but also we have a bunch of special things tonight. So we got some special surprises that we're going to announce, and we have some prizes, some really big prizes. I was blown away by some of our friends that donated some things to give back to, really all our listeners, which I thought was awesome. So we got some prizes coming from Hyperice, from Anchor, from Smart Tools, and from M-Trigger. So really awesome that they're giving away stuff. It's like over $2,000 worth of stuff, which I thought was really cool. So someone tonight is going to win some of that stuff tonight. We're going to keep announcing them throughout the night. So I think it's time to get started, right? We're already rambling too much, or I'm rambling too much. All right, Champion Crews, everybody ready? I think we all just unmute and just unleash, right?
What are we doing?
Lenny's here.
Hello. Hello.
What are we doing?
Lenny's out of his element because he's not introducing any students right now, which is weird. All right.
My sheet is empty, no students.
Well, for all those people that just auto fast forward the first 2 minutes of our podcast anyway, we might as well keep rambling, right? So Len, why don't you introduce to the world our very first student that was on episode 1 of our podcast. I'm going to add the spotlight to him right now, and I'm going to ask to unmute him and really put him on the spot. But Gabe Morgan, the Gabeinator, from episode 1, just happened to be on his clinical affiliation at just the wrong time to be on there. Gabe, how's everything going since your clinical 6 years ago, right? Have you been a PT for 6 years?
Yeah, it's hard to believe. It was just yesterday. I was hanging out, sitting in the athletic training room with you two, recording this podcast.
That was amazing. So it's been 300 episodes. Which one's your favorite episode so far?
I mean, number one, it's the original. It's just like all the other comic books. The number one is the best one.
That's awesome. Well, Gabe, appreciate you always being part of the team and everything. I'm gonna kick you off spotlight now, and we're gonna get down to business.
We should turn number one into an NFT. That could be a non-fungible, tangible, whatever it's called. And you could a fungible token, and you can own number one.
We're gonna make the game and trade it. All right, Gabe. Thanks, man. Good to see you as always. All right, let's start. Let's hit this chat box and start going. Who's ready? Is everybody ready? I'm not ready. Hold on one second. All right, let's see. Dave said, okay. What? Awesome. All right. I have to get through the joke questions already, but good. All right, let's go. All right. So first question comes from Kelly Capobianco. What is your experience with billing as an ATC or a PTA? Len, you want to take this one?
Well, I'm not an ATC or a PTA, but I know Bill, so. Back in my old job, we used to have PTAs, and they, I think, billed. I don't even know, to tell you the truth. I think it was actually, I never worked with one directly as my partner. I was worked with an athletic trainer who couldn't bill in the state of Alabama, and I haven't worked with one in Massachusetts who would be working with me. So I don't really know, but I would imagine they just bill normally, and a PT signs off as is normal and customary, right?
Yeah, and I don't think ATC can officially bill yet, right? I know they're working on that. I may be wrong. Kelly, I think we might be the wrong people to ask for that one. So yeah, I don't think we're in touch with that. So apologize. Well, let's see. Next question from Robert. This one's good. I was gonna skip some of the joke ones, but this one's worth asking. Lenny, how far did you hit your 7-iron in Colorado?
Let's not talk about my 7. Let's talk about my driver, the number 18, the 18th hole. For the last hole I played, I hit my drive at 342 yards, just saying, and I had an eagle putt on a par 5, and I missed it, but I got a birdie.
Mike
was my witness.
And I did witness it, and I want everybody to know I hit it 301.5, which is a world record for me. We love the altitude in Colorado. I'll leave it at that. All right, let's see. Let's do this. Kevin, can I make you in charge of making sure participants are muted? Do you mind being in charge of that? If you hear anything, you're going to be the one in charge of that. All right, let's see. Next question comes from Jacob Jacobs. What's your number one piece of advice for growing your business and specifically getting more athletes into your clinic? I like that. What do you think? I kind of want to hear Dan Pope on this one. What do you think, Dan? You're one that I think did a really good job of transitioning from getting started in outpatient ortho and then finding your niche of working with the athletes you wanted to work on. What kind of advice would you give Jacob?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you kind of have to get out there in the community. I think it really depends on what kind of niche you want to get into. For me, it was kind of fitness, CrossFit. And for a lot of folks, that's not too hard because we're already involved in the community they want to be in, right? So I work with a lot of students that want to get more involved in, let's say, CrossFit, and they usually are already at a CrossFit gym, and they probably know a few gym owners. And then just because of that, they get a little business. So I think the big thing is figure out first and foremost, what kind of niche do you want to be involved in? And where is that community? Are they inside of gyms? Is this going to be something that's, some sort of sport? Are you going to local coaches? Are you kind of networking and contacting? I think it's really a matter of figuring out, where you want to be and then reaching out there and trying to find those folks. I'm getting screwed up because Lenny's smiling and laughing over here, and I don't know what that means.
No, I'm not laughing at your answer. I'm laughing at the sound. It sounds like you're sitting in a church right now, and you answer that question with the...
Switch my mic. I'll get a better mic going.
All right, well, while Dan, I know, I thought that was very booming. I like that. Well, while Dan gets a new bike, I think what I liked about Dan's answer there is I think it's about integrating into those environments, right? So I know Dave was deeply invested in the gymnastics community, so that was easy for him. Lisa, obviously the same thing, wanted to get deep in with rowers because that's her passion, right? Mike Skidoo and I, we talked at the beginning that, let's infiltrate, let's get in with groups of golfers together and try to do that. So I think that's the way to do it. Dewesh, what about you from a gym perspective? Because we do have a lot of strength coach, personal trainers. What would you say about how would you get more athletes in a gym setting?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer from a general perspective first. So if you're looking to get more athletes into your clinic, have a gym with your clinic.
That's a good point. I like that.
You got to have the equipment to train the athlete. You got to have the space to train the athletes. As far as getting a more athletic population into your gym, produce really good results related to performance. right? So we know that if an athlete's coming into you, they're not just there to get their, lifts up in the gym. Like you got to have key performance indicators within sport, within athletic movements that you got to be able to help them improve. And then hopefully a lot of that will grow via word of mouth. I know that's mainly been ours, way of growing athletic population in our gym. Like we don't advertise for sports performance at all, but we seem to be growing every year. So
I like it.
Keep crushing it with athletes.
I hate to say it, but if you build it, they will come a little bit, right? Like if you're in an outpatient orthopedic setting with curtains and parallel bars and stuff like that, I mean, that's fine if that's your population, but athletes won't feel as comfortable if they don't feel like it's an athletic environment. So I like that. Let's see. Drew asks, I shouldn't read this one out loud, but are we able to stop in and visit Champion? I'm in Boston in a month. I like that, which is great. Yeah, sure. Email Lenny. Just DM Lenny on social media, and he can help coordinate. But no, we take people all the time. I thought that was good. Let me see. Chad Mullen asks, how often do you use shoulder manuals with baseball pitchers? I cover an independent league baseball team, so we play 6 days a week. I'll jump in and answer that one. But for our in season with our baseball pitchers, we'll do manuals probably about twice a week. Right. So, our starting pitchers that are on 5-day rotations, we'll do it once every 5 days. So they'll be, twice every 10. I shouldn't even say that. We have 2 different sets of manuals we do. So they kind of take the program and split it into 2. But I would say twice a week would be perfect. Right. And if you kind of go through a good chunk of your strengthening program twice a week, I think that would be really good. All right, let's go live to Denise. We're gonna do our first live question. I think I have to ask to unmute you, Denise. What's up, Denise? How are you? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great. Good to see you again. I definitely I remember you from our past Zoom, so good to see you.
Yeah, I am attempting earbuds, so you cannot hear my 4-year-old twins as they're crazy.
I would imagine. What can we answer for you tonight?
So I have a patient. I work in an outpatient PT clinic, and I see him about once a year, about every fall. He gets this inkling and he wants to do weightlifting, and I love lifting. But every time he tries some of the bigger lifts, the cleans, the snatch, any of the Olympic lifts, back pain. And
every time, yeah.
At what point do you finally say maybe you don't need to be? I hate limiting, because the reason I became a PT is to keep them as active as possible, as long as possible. So when do you say maybe we don't need to do clean and snatches?
So I think the Champion crew is all smiling right now. I think you submitted that question, right, on our forum?
I did.
I think we answered it and recorded it. Maybe we didn't. I bet you it's coming. So that's actually ironic. We're it's going to be in a future episode, but I guess we can steal it a little bit for tonight. But Dan, I think you answered that eloquently a little bit there. But what do you do with the person? I mean, I think most PTs would say if maybe it's the lifting, but what else do you think might be going on, Dan?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's like you don't want to limit these folks at all. Can you guys hear my still is booming? What's going on in my room? Is that okay?
Sounds amazing.
You have no furniture still.
Is your room empty?
It is. We just got the whole place redone.
This is going to be the worst. This is going to be the worst recorded podcast of all time. I apologize for everybody, but yeah. So Dan, what did you end up saying? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think you definitely want to talk about goals from the get-go, and I think unfortunately it's one of those things where you're always trying to help folks when they come in the door. If they really want to do Olympic weightlifting, then I think you try to help them, right? I think I would start looking at their programming, like what are they actually doing? Are they doing snatch 4 or 5 days a week? Do we need to play with their volume a little bit? We need to maybe not take away the snatch, but maybe modify the snatch, maybe do more hang variants, whatever it is. I find a lot of folks can't handle full lifts, but they can do partial lifts quite well, I think the other part is there's probably a lot of low-hanging fruit that you might not be able to work with him on if you're only seeing him once a year. So doing like a more of a mobility screen, see where he has limitations, maybe try to take the programming and writing the programming for him for a bit and make it more progressive in nature if he is having low back issues. Supplement with another strengthening program for his spine, right? So maybe you're doing a lot more let's say good mornings or 45-degree back extensions, and being a little bit more cautious with things like squats and deadlifts. I think there's a lot of things you can try, right?
I like that. And I think to me, what it comes down to, Denise, is, think about maybe, is there a way you could do it differently? Not that you should say you shouldn't do it, but maybe they need better coaching. Maybe they need a better ramp up. Maybe their body's not physically prepared. Those would be the first things I would jump into. So, well said, Dan. I like that. Let's see. Next question is from Diana. Diana says, question is twofold. Okay. How do you monitor load management for an athlete in season that you are with day in, day out versus an athlete you're seeing in the clinic? Is there anything you're doing objectively or basing it just on subjective reporting or calculations? Dave, I know you've tried to tackle workload management in season with gymnasts. Why don't you give an example for you? Because, workload is I don't think anyone has workload solved, right? I honestly, like anybody. So Diana, you can make up what workload means to you, right? Is it a work capacity thing in the gym? Is it practice? How do you measure that? Is it GPS for a field sport? I mean, there's so many different ways that you can do workload. But Dave, I know you've tried to kind of build this from the ground up in gymnastics. Can you give her some tips?
Yeah. So I think when you're working with someone day to day and you're seeing them frequently and talking to them, I think you can use much more sensitive metrics, right? What I mean by that is that small changes can make a difference in how you program or what you do. And I think a lot more of like the wellness factors come into play when you're seeing someone every single day, because Tim Gabb and I have actually talked about this, which is he's a bigger fan sometimes of using the wellness markers as a proxy for how to change the workouts on the fly. So if somebody has like a terrible couple nights of sleep, or their mood is really low, or their recovery score is really, really low from a subjective point of view, you can tweak their workouts and you can modify things pretty quickly and pretty acutely and make minor small tweaks, versus if you have someone who you're only seeing once a week in the clinic, you're probably not going to be able to have that frequent communication on how they feel every single day when they record in their journal or whatever else it is. So in that, you can probably start to go into more metrics of like session RPE, like how hard is your training week to week, and are you looking for a certain amount of workload units that are arbitrary to running, or we have a system we made for gymnastics. So, and I actually do this, right? I have athletes that I work with very frequently and I can adjust on the fly, but then consulting work or working with other colleges, when they ask me, it's like, well, I don't really see your data, until once per month or every other week. And so for me, it's more about, okay, what your goal is for workload, chronic workload, and then what are you trying to do to build up to it? And you can kind of say, all right, what can we do in the weight room to build up to that? What can we do in the training gym? And so, yeah, I think it's much more global markers versus when you're doing it day to day. It's like a lot of wellness and nitty gritty stuff.
I love it. Jonah, what about in the gym? So, in season athlete in the gym, what are some ways that you recommend that people monitor load and workloads?
Overall, I think conversation goes such a long way. Especially if you do have a ton of athletes you work with and people are constantly kind of coming in and out, or in our scenario where I might be working with an athlete who I don't actually program for, Dewey writes their programs. I think just always having that conversation and making it so that they know to come to you with little things that are going on, or, hey, I actually don't have a tournament this weekend. Is there anything extra we should add in since I've got 8 days off or something like that? So yeah, I really do think a conversation goes a long way. And then the other piece is probably just having some sort of measures that you are tracking. And it doesn't have to be an everyday thing, because in that case, it could end up being more of a burden on your athlete and the staff. But having some sort of things that you can look at to just get bigger picture view. If it works in your setting to do counter movement jumps on a force plate every day, if you have that, or to do surveys every day or things like that, awesome. But oftentimes, depending on your situation, that might just not be feasible. So relying on really good conversations and building that open course of talk with your athletes, I think, can go longer than just about anything else.
I like that. And don't be rigid, right? Like, don't be rigid in your programming. Be ready to adjust on the fly based. Remember, what we're doing is oftentimes complementary to what they're doing on the field, right? So, we have to adjust on the fly. So big round of applause for Jonah, everybody. First question officially answered on the podcast. Good job, Jonah.
Right in his wheelhouse. Nice little softball. Great.
That was great. Yeah.
It didn't freeze on me.
It didn't freeze up. He's clearly from Canada. If you didn't get that, but welcome so much. Everyone appreciated and is gonna really enjoy your Canadian accent moving forward. I think that's awesome. So let's see. All right, let's see. Next question is from Carly. Carly says, do you think a cyclops lesion after ACL is caused more from the surgical procedure, patient compliance, or lack of knowledge of the PT? Ooh, Carly, that's aggressive. I like it. Of course, it could be a combo, but what's y'all's experience? What do you think, Len? You want to tackle the cyclops? Should we just ask Tim Heckman, who's online tonight, or what do you think, Len?
Hopefully my answer is what Tim would say, but I think it's probably it's nobody's fault. It's a little of everything, most likely. No, I don't think we really know. I don't see it in like one particular doctor. I don't see it in one particular surgery. It's just kind of all over the place. I don't know if it really depends on graft, quad tendon, patella tendon, hamstring. It's where the remnant of the ACL was, so the little stump there forms some scarring. So tough to say. I wouldn't say it's bad PT. I wouldn't say it's bad surgical techniques. I would just say it is what it is. So unfortunately, it's not a straight up answer. So because we don't know, you're going to be aggressive at the beginning to get the extension back, and get that motion going and get their pain down.
I like it. Tim, do you agree, Tim? What do you think? Thumbs up, or you want to, I'm going to unmute you, Tim. We have Tim Heckman online tonight. So, he's one of the gurus of knee rehabilitation. We might as well have him join in. Tim, what do you think?
Well, I would agree. I think that Len's spot on. I think from the beginning, I think if you can use an evaluation-based model to your program, regardless of the graft, you want to be having that conversation with the patient if you don't feel like they're meeting their goals, and you want to have that conversation with the physician early so that things can be done to kind of address that.
I love it. Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the insight too. Honor to have you on here. So yeah, awesome.
Thanks,
all right, so let's see. I think let's do this. Before we get to the next question, I think we have our first surprise for tonight, and there's more coming. But the first surprise, maybe it's not the most exciting. I mean, it is to me. But the first one we'll do. Let's do this. We're going to do a special promotion for everybody on here and everybody listening in the next several weeks or so. This will probably be a good month or so. But we're going to give a coupon code for 25% off a bunch of our courses. So write this down. The coupon code is 300 podcast, 300 podcast. You can figure out why we picked that, right? But 300 podcast, that's 25% off. And we're going to do this. That's going to be on my shoulder course, Lenny and I's knee course, Dan Lorenz, who's also on this call, his and I BFR's course. I said that weird, but our course on blood flow restriction training, and our rehab protocols with Kevin Wilk and Dr. James Andrews. So 25% off those. The coupon will work for that. Head to MikeReinold.com. Then we got more, 25% off all Dave's courses, Dave Tilley's courses at shiftmovementscience.com. Dave, you got a bunch of courses out there for rehab professionals that are looking to do some stuff. So obviously the gymnastics vibe, but Dave's got some great stuff and extremities, right? What courses are on there, Dave?
There's a lumbar spine course that's like everything I've ever learned. That is actually more non-gymnastics people than gymnastics people have taken. And then the upper extremity and lower extremity ones are very much all. Yeah,
I've seen Dave put these together and they're unreal. So
of my life.
So check those out. Shiftmovementscience.com. Same thing. Use that coupon code. And last but not least, Dan Pope from fitnesspainfree.com. Same coupon code. 25% off his courses, his mobility programs, his pain programs. So if you actually want to see how Dan programs, which is an amazing thing to learn from as well, you should check that out. But Dan, you want to what courses do you have in there?
Yeah, sure. I've got a shoulder and a knee. All my courses are very kind of strength and fitness forward. So how to do the lifts, where they break down, where injuries occur in the strength and fitness individual, and how to get people back to training after they do get hurt.
Right. And I will say again, we talk a lot as a crew and, we give some advice and mentoring. I always tell these two that they over deliver too much. I know that's hilarious that we say that, right? But if you check out their courses, you'll see they're amazing. So, all right. So that's the special one, coupon code 300 podcast. Next up, which we're going to do in a few minutes, we're going to space these out for excitement, right? We're building up excitement, right? Next one's going to be from Hyperice. So we have a nice prize coming from Hyperice that we'll get to in a second. But Let's get back to some questions. All right, let's see. Next question is from Derek. He says, how did you market yourself to the community and make yourself known to the MDs in the area? That's actually a great question, because Lenny and I did not, when we started in Boston, we did probably what you're not supposed to do. I was working with the Red Sox, so I didn't have any local connections to patients or MDs other than the ones involved with the Red Sox. I didn't have a lot of local connections. Lenny was living in another state in Alabama, and he came up and we did this. So we literally started with very minimal contact. I think the thing that we did was we started with a small set of patients, and we let their word of mouth kind of trickle from them and let them talk to the doctors. Then Lenny and I kind of reached out to the doctors that we knew just, through networks and stuff, and just said, hey, we're opening up this clinic. We're in your area. Len, did I miss anything? What do you think?
No, I think that's it. I mean, you started before me, and then I came up, and a lot of people reached out to start PT with you and had no clue who I even was in the area. But we, people got on my schedule and got to know me and trusted me. And I think just our results helped out a ton. And I know it kind of sounds kind of insignificant or not as sexy as one would think, but I think that's really it. It's just, we just gave good results and treated people well. And I think our limited doctor connection may have helped eventually, but I didn't have anybody. I knew all the Birmingham doctors, and I don't even think anybody in Birmingham made a phone call for us. Like, nobody called anybody at MGH or Beth Israel or anything like that. You had some connections from the Red Sox, but I think it was just really just giving good care. And I think your website helped a lot. Just with just SEO and search engine optimization, people just eventually finding us. So it was just kind of from the ground up, really, honestly.
Yeah, it seems like at first you don't have enough people, but it happens. It snowballs. It takes time. And I like to think we like it this way. Like, we're kind of friends with everybody. We don't have like one doctor group that sends us patients. We're friends with everybody. Same thing with coaches. Same thing with personal trainers. Like, we're friends with everybody. I think that's the approach, is just expand your friendship network and collaborate. Right. I think that's what we did. Is we probably got in more with our doctors by sending them patients. Right. Yeah. And then that opened up dialogue when we sent patients to them. So
having direct access helped too, because people would see us and we would have to refer people off for ACL, UCL, shoulder dislocations, and we started becoming referral source for the doctors. So they want to be friends with us because they know they're going to get surgeries from us, like significant amounts of surgeries. We send a lot of surgeries off, unfortunately, for obvious injuries.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, most of my patients get better with non-operative care, but Lenny sends them.
All my patients need surgeries, major surgeries, right, yeah. Revisions and everything else. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Next question comes from Trevor. Trevor asks, how aggressive are you pushing a reverse total shoulder? I have a patient 10 weeks out, got close to full range of motion actively, and have been progressive strength, targeting deltoids, etc. Do you become more aggressive with hand behind back, knowing the increased risk of anterior dislocation? I'll start that one off and just saying that the reason why the person had this reverse total shoulder was not to maximize their range of motion, right? This is a pretty significant procedure that they did, and the goal was to decrease pain, right? And to maximize their function, whatever that may be. Now, reaching behind your back, I get it. That's functional, and that's an important thing, but that is an often challenging position for people to get into. What I tend to focus on to get their hand behind their back better is as much soft tissue that I can do around the area. And then we'll work on range of motion in other planes of the shoulder that are more comfortable. And then what happens over time is usually behind the back tends to increase as well. Remember, the shoulder is a circle, right? And it's that circle concept of stability, but the shoulder is a circle. So if you improve motion in one direction, oftentimes you're going to have a reciprocal increase in a different direction as well. So kind of keep that in mind as well. You don't have to necessarily push, but when your question starts with how aggressive do you feel pushing, I would say mild to moderate is how much I feel aggressive to push, because it's not worth it with that procedure. That's not their main goal, right? Sound good? All right, let's see. Aaron Weaver asks, advice for those on PT islands, small towns, etc. I was thinking like the Bahamas. That's the first thing that came to mind. I was like, stay there. That would be my advice. Who may not be able to leave for residency, don't have access to personal quality mentorship in person. What do you guys think here? This is a good question. I think we talk about this a lot, but a PT that's in a small community that doesn't have some good mentorship. Dave, Tilly, what do you think, bud?
The first 2 years of my situation was less than optimal for Con Ed. And so goodness, thank you for the internet. That's really what I have to say, is that I found the joints that I really didn't feel comfortable with. And I tried to find the people and or research that were the most knowledgeable there. So like my first one was like dealing with a lot of like chronic low back and chronic neck. I was like, help. I found Urson, and Urson was treating a lot of like chronic neck and chronic low back and like more pain science stuff. And so he was kind of my first foot in the door to like a virtual mentorship through his, membership group. And it was extremely helpful. And then obviously found, Mike and Lenny eventually wanting to get more into sports. And so, yeah, you can find a lot of groups. Chris Johnson was actually very helpful to me early on too, about trying to get a lot of like lower body research and stuff. So there's tons of people with so much great info. You can find like research groups, like online book clubs or research review clubs. There's tons of really good spots that are really good, high quality information. So I would do that before you could get out, into the world.
I like that. And I think what Dave didn't say too is that there's a lot of people out there. It's about you reaching out and networking with them. And that's what Dave did. That's what Dave did with us, right? Similar kind of thing. I think that's really important. And there's a lot of communities out there, right? Like if you're listening to this podcast, then, usually you like the way we educate, you like the things we talk about. We have things for you, right? We have, programs, My Inner Circle, stuff like that. Dan's got a similar program. We have those things. The American Academy of Sports Physical Therapy, obviously something that I'm involved with, has a strong community as well. So there's lots of people you can reach out to. Don't feel like you're on an island. I think there's lots of people that would be very eager to talk to you and answer questions. Just start reaching out. And, you may, it's okay if you strike out. You send 5 DMs and, Lenny Macrina doesn't reply to you, but Dan Pope does, then great. Lenny's dead to you, but Dan's now your mentor. I mean, that's amazing. So I like that. All right, let's see. Next question is from Tiffany. Tiffany says, with an increased awareness of pelvic floor importance, do you integrate any of those concepts into your practice? I'll start it off, but I know both Dan Pope and I'd love to hear Lisa's thoughts on these things. But I will say that I think pelvic floor is probably way more important than we give it credit, and probably something we're missing out on. Certainly not an area of expertise for me, but I don't know. Dan, why don't you jump in, because I know you worked with Sarah Duvall on a course, and then obviously we'll let Lisa take it away. But Dan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's obviously very, very important. For me, I feel comfortable working with people with pelvic floor issues in the gym and how to modify for them and how to get them to exercise and train safely. But when it comes to more treatment, I usually just refer out because it's not my specialty. So at least for me, yes, incredibly important, but I'm not good enough to treat as well as other folks that are around me that are much better. So that's generally how I end up kind of tackling that.
I love it. What do you think, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I talk about pelvic floor connections way more now than I ever used to. Mostly, like, I've started following a lot of postpartum and women's health PTs to learn from them, because I think they teach how to use your core the best personally. So I've learned a lot, even just in that way, from them. But same as Dan, it's not in any way my specialty. I've just started to learn more because I think it's really important. And so I'll give the basics, but then if it feels like it's a very significant issue, or even just a little bit more than I'm capable of helping, I'll send somebody to a pelvic floor specialist. We have a lot in the area. And Kevin's fiance actually is becoming one.
Nice. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Is she in the room with you right now?
No, I should bring her in for this one. But one thing she's advised me on is, I mean, obviously these issues can affect a lot of people, and men and women. But if you have a patient who's not too far out from a pregnancy, I think you want to give them some sort of questionnaire to just see if a rule in, rule out type thing. I think a Cozy questionnaire is a pretty popular one out there, and it just asks questions.
Really the only one there is, yeah.
Yeah. So I think, that if you're not, an expert on treating those conditions, you want to be able to refer them to someone that can, and you want to have it on your radar. So I think a lot of times when we see postpartum women with pelvic or lower back pain, handing out that questionnaire should be kind of a no-brainer. And then based on those results, I mean, you could look it up. I think it's something like 3 or more positive answers. It's a rule in for getting a pelvic health consult. So that's something I keep on the radar.
Yeah. The other thing that I've started to do too is like trying to just pull away from that, like only people who have had children need to pay attention to their pelvic floor, because it's like all of us have them. We all need to pay attention, and we all need to learn how to brace and pressure manage to not hurt or not mess up pelvic floor like balance. So I feel like that's my other, like, I'm not afraid, whether it's a guy or girl, to just be like, by the way, you need to pay attention to this aspect when you're doing things. And even if then it's like, here's these videos from these wonderful women's health PTs that I can share with you.
Right.
And then, like, you know, I'll check in with them about it. And if they don't feel like they're getting it, then that's where, like Kevin was saying, right, and Dan, like, I'll send them somewhere.
I like it. And that's probably the best way. We owe it to our patients to know something about it, some awareness about it. We probably can do some of the basics, but when in doubt, have somebody in your network is the way to roll. I like that. So, all right, let's see. Next question comes from George. George says, would you recommend using blood flow restriction on a baseball player off day or as recovery? I tell you what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put Dan Lorenz on the spot, who was grumping at me. I'll answer the baseball part of it, and then I'm curious to hear Dan's thoughts on using it as recovery. So I'm going to add Dan to the spotlight. But Dan Lorenz and I have an online course teaching you how to use BFR, which that coupon code 300 podcast works for. But you know, so he's the man I go to for this. But I'll say with baseball players, you know, I'm the first to tell you that I'm conservative with BFR. We use BFR in the lower extremity, but we don't in the upper extremity yet. And I'm keeping an open mind about it, but I do think the neurovascular structures in the upper arm are super sensitive, and they're super sensitized from the act of throwing, that I don't want to use that as a treatment technique or a recovery technique, because that to me seems contradicting each other. So that's my comment on baseball players' arms. I'll leave it at that. But Dan, what's the science showing about using BFR in some fashion for recovery?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially in that population. There's some decent literature on ischemic preconditioning for recovery. Usually the benefits of that are probably 24 hours and later, at least the early indications of that are. A lot of that research was on cyclists and more endurance athletes. So I think we have a lot more to learn on that. I will say that I think some of it is kind of what the athlete wants. You know, sometimes we have to battle that you might not want to do something, there's some compromise. I do think this is a little bit different, just the IPC method, or just the compress relax, than exercise under restriction, because this is more passive. And I got a lot of people are doing that with Normatex anyway, right? So I think some guys, I know they like, because they like the pump, you know, they just feel good after that. And whether or not that's anything physiologically, I don't know if we know, but as I always say, the placebo effect is still in effect. So if they think it's helping, it probably is.
Yeah, well said. And, you know, I think we're learning more, and this ischemic preconditioning concept, I think, is interesting. So, you know, I hope we get more research coming out on that. But thanks, Dan. Appreciate the input. And again, super awesome that you joined us tonight. So thanks for joining us. Why don't we do this? Let's give something away. What do we think? Let's do Hyper Ice. So the first thing we're going to give away tonight, and I got to get my website up so I can do our pick the number out of a hat through Google. They somehow do it.
Shares.
They do it for me. So the first thing we're gonna give out is the new HyperIce X. So many of you know HyperIce. They're the ones behind the HyperIce vibration gun. They have the Normatec boots, a bunch of great stuff. They have a brand new knee sleeve that just came out that has hot, cold, and contrast treatment all in one, and it's like instant. So you turn the thing on and it's cold fast, like in seconds, and then you can make it hot fast in seconds. So it's near instant. It can maintain that temperature for hours, which is pretty neat. So I'm really looking forward to this technology going to other joints, but they're starting with the knee. It's a really neat device. This thing's $400, but we're going to give one away tonight. Len, are you ready for this? Because you're going to be in charge.
Ready.
Here comes the Google random number generator. Yes, that's a thing, apparently. I had to find it online, but I found it. Len, the number is 511. Who's our lucky winner?
511. I'm getting there. 511 is Rodrigo Marcondes.
Nice, Rodrigo. Congrats on your HyperIce. We will figure out a way to email you probably tomorrow at this point. Give us a day. And congrats. Len, make sure you remember that so we don't have to watch the recording of this tomorrow and figure it out.
Got it. It was
awesome.
Dave Tilley, right? I said Dave Tilley.
Awesome. All right, let's get back to the questions. Next up for our giveaways, which we'll do in a little bit, it's going to be from Smart Tools, and I think this is a great follow up because the Smart Tools can actually do that blood flow restriction with the ischemic pressure. So we're gonna do Smart Tools next, but you're gonna have to wait and listen for a little bit longer until we get there. All right, let's see. Next question is, have you changed? Oh, another BFR one. Dang it. Well, Dan, you're back up. Have you changed any of your thoughts regarding BFR since you put out your online course? If so, what are you doing different? All right, this is a good one. Here, Dan, I'm going to put you back on spotlight. Come in again. So have we changed any of our thoughts on BFR? I'll jump in and just say, like, I would say I haven't. I think if you watch our BFR course, we intentionally tried to make it a little open-ended and not like, hey, here's a cookie cutter thing, because we're super learning this as we go along. So, it was interesting. There was just a publication at aossm that actually didn't show the greatest results. It actually showed that BFR after ACL didn't provide any significant impact if you did or you didn't use it. I haven't broken down the method, so I can't do that. But Dan, any new research come out that's updated your line of thoughts on BFR?
Not a whole lot. There's some more stuff on proximal. We're still learning a little bit more about that. It seems like there might be a proximal benefit that we didn't really realize before. But I can't say I've changed too much. I will say I go to failure on my last set.
Right. Yeah, I like that.
I do that for sure. I kind of get away from that 30-15-15 thing. Because again, you go to failure, then you know that you got the maximum effort, and that's probably where most of the benefit is from. Maybe that's one thing. I think we're learning a little bit more. I think some of the hormonal stuff is probably a little overrated because you get the hormonal stuff lifting weights anyway.
Right.
But I think the effort piece is probably where a lot of the benefit comes in if you go to failure.
I like that. Well said. And I think that too, like, it's an equation, right, of load and pressure, right? So if you're slightly off on the pressure and the load a little bit, and you still make sure you go to failure on that last rep, that probably makes sure you don't miss that benefit. So great one, Dan. I like it. Awesome. Thanks for joining us again. There's probably going to be more BFR questions, so we'll see. We may bring you back on, but thanks, Dan. Really appreciate it. All right, let's see. Next question goes from Adam. Adam says, why does it seem to take so long for research to find its way into practice? Specifically referring to surgeons and the protocols they use. That's a good question. All right, who wants to answer that? Why are some surgeon protocols a little out of date in our mind? Who wants to jump in on that one? Anyone? Wow.
Well,
I will.
I will try to answer that. Like me, especially that first question. Why does stuff take so long to become into practice? I think it's in practice, and then we're like, oh wait, this seems interesting. We now need to research it, which takes months to collect the data and figure out what the data means, and then write it all up. And now you're 6, 8, 12 months into the process, and now you need to get it into a journal, and you have to figure out which journal you want to get to, and then they will either turn you down or they accept it. And then they have to review it. And it takes reviewers sometimes weeks or months to review it and get it back to you. You need to fix it in 4 to 6 weeks, send it back, they review it again. And now you're 2+ years at least into getting a paper published, which is what it commonly takes, I think, for us to publish something. Although our weighted ball paper kind of went through pretty well.
Well, very minimal revisions, right? I mean, I don't want to pat ourselves.
Right, and it was a Researcher of the Year award. So, I think it takes so long. Now, for surgeons, believe it, I mean, surgical protocols, I don't know if there's any doctors on this phone call. Sorry, I'm about to bash you a little. They basically inherit a protocol from their attending that they got in their fellowship, and it's just theirs now. And they've taken it on. They sometimes don't even know what's on the protocol, or they've modified it minimally, based off of some, like, the worst patient they ever had. So they make it even more conservative. And then it's up to us to kind of convince them that we can do more. We can probably get them moving quicker or something. So it's tough to break that barrier down, but there's a whole world of communicating that has to occur between PTs and MDs to get it flowing more efficiently.
Great stuff. All right, let's see. Next question. We actually just answered. This is amazing. I think Dan Lorenz is clairvoyant, but he was talking about the 30, 15, 15, 15 rep scheme for BFR. And he said the same thing. Can you just go to fatigue instead? So great job, Chris. You read Dan's mind. That was awesome. Let's see. Zachary says, do you think PT should progress patients beyond the protocols given by the physician? That's a good follow-up. And if so, do you use your own protocols? Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about us using our own protocols a little bit. We have decent relationships with most of the doctors that we work with now, right? So I think there's a mutual respect, and I think we've earned that through collaboration and publications and stuff like that. We're in a bit of a different position. So most of our physicians will send a protocol, and then I'll call them and have a question, and they'll say like, oh, you just do what you want. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's about trust. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not any better. I'm just trusted by the physician. So I think that's one thing that I think you can do to get going with the protocols with the physicians a little bit better, is develop more trust with them. That being said, who wants to jump in about this one? If you're a PT and you get a protocol that you feel is slow, would anybody on this call progress them faster? How do you guys handle that?
We just did a whole podcast on this, by the way. I think it was released recently too. So
Len, we've done 300 episodes. We've answered every question in the world.
I know you can.
But I mean, would anybody do that? Would anybody go faster?
I mean, is this off the record? Are we recording this?
It's 100% on the record, like forever.
I know. You can't go too fast. You just can't, because I mean, the physician's patient. They ordered what they ordered. You just can't. I mean, if something goes wrong, you're in trouble. You better be ready for your license to be on the line if you go too fast. Now, with that, I know there's certain things that I will do that if it's not on the protocol, I mean, I'll still do it. But if he says or she says 90 degrees for 6 weeks, you got to follow that. You really do, because if you try to push into 100 and they tear their meniscus on a meniscus repair with an ACL, good luck fighting that one. So I wouldn't be too aggressive.
Yeah, I think you'd be smart. If you're really feeling bad about it, reach out to the doctor and try to get some clarification. Yeah. And just realize you may get shut down, but worth asking. All right, let's see. Next one, Keegan. This is a quick one. Thoughts on using BFR combined with neuromuscular electrical stimulation immediately after surgery for ACL? Any reason to wait? Nope. We start right away and we use the two together. I think it's a no-brainer to use them together. So I agree. Definitely do it. Good question. Let's see. Morgan asked, do you have any advice on a new grad who's about to start a sports residency? Any resources for them? Who wants to tackle this one? And remember here, you know what? I'm going to throw this at Dewesh. And I know this has nothing to do with the sports residency, but Dewesh, he runs our internship program for our strength and conditioning coaches, which I believe we're accepting applications for now. But he runs our program here too. So what sort of advice do we give our interns that are coming in on the way in? I think it's going to be the same advice for the sports residency.
Yeah, I think put yourself out there so that you can learn from not only PTs. Like if you're seeking a sports residency as a PT, you probably want to go to the source of who's working with the most athletes and learn from strength coaches, maybe even some ATCs, and try to get some information that's a little bit more relevant. Because I think there's a lot of concepts, at least from a lot of the interns that I've seen, and a lot of the interns that we do get are PT students that are looking to get a little bit more of like a sports background or a training background. And a lot of what they're missing is just big concepts that'll help them develop systems that they can actually use. I think a lot of PTs or young grads are stuck on just like learning a bunch of exercises, and they think that that's like an entryway into sports PT. And it's not really the case, right? You got to learn a lot of systems. You got to learn big picture concepts that you can apply to a multitude of things instead of just saying, hey, I have a couple hundred exercises that I can use as progressions or regressions. So I would say start learning concepts from strength coaches, ATs, and whoever else that might be relevant.
I like it. Like open your mind to those things. And I would just add too, like you signed up for this very specific residency, right? So there's a lot of different thoughts and there's a lot of different things that are out there that are very acceptable, but you signed up for this sports residency. So meaning I would dig in deep with any research publications or anything of that group, because you went there seeking to learn from them and their mentorship from them. You don't want to go in as the contrarian to them. You want to go in to say, I'm here to absorb everything I can from your group. So if I was going to go do a residency right now with Dan Lorenz, I would be Googling his name and going to PubMed and reading every single one of his articles, because I want to know that, I want to go in there knowing as much as I can about their thought process and how they do things, so I can get the most out of it. Good one. Let's see. Trevor says, with recent trends away from surgical interventions to more conservative management, are you aware of any studies comparing non-op versus surgical for UCL injuries? I didn't think you were going there. So for Tommy John injuries of the elbow, nope. Probably going to need surgery. Let's see. Next question, Matthew. We give it rehab for a little bit, but oftentimes it's hard. I mean, the time that non-op management works for Tommy John is when it's a young kid, it's super early, and I think, you know, you could do a good job, but you have to intervene with that person. I would not. I don't think we're as successful as we'd like to be. I'll leave it at that. So. Let me see. Matthew says, are there any non-obvious things you believe so strongly about that you attempt to implement it into your client's training, despite the client type or their specific sporting needs? Okay. I like to incorporate good, sound financial advice to most of my clients, whether or not they like it or not, right? So we have all our clients coming in the last couple of years on Robinhood, cryptocurrency, and stuff, right? That's those
advice goes around sometimes. You should definitely break up with her.
We've been known to recommend them break out. That's a good. How about let's go to maybe Jonah on this one, or Dwesh, but somebody from the gym. But are there any non-obvious things that you believe so strongly in that you want to throw in everybody's program, or not? And I think it's okay to say no and say why. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I guess what classifies as non-obvious, right? I mean, if we're keeping it strictly training related, I would say then maybe to some people not super obvious would be making sure that we have conversations about nutrition, hydration, sleep, some of these other factors that's going to affect, you know, your output in training and even just your performance within sport. So that's stuff that we certainly talk about pretty regularly. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out what non-obvious means.
I think that's a good one, because people don't really think about that stuff. They just want to know, is there a pill I can take? Should I eat more steak? Like, way more protein shakes? Like, how can I get bigger, faster, stronger, and heal faster? But little things like that, just people don't think about, but it's huge, right? We know it's huge, but they don't want to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even last week, I convinced first I had a conversation about eating breakfast, and this is a kid going to college next year, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't have a breakfast routine, so.
Yeah,
I got him eating breakfast.
He's in intermittent
18
fasting.
years of his life.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You know what I think it's going to come down to? I don't think we have a crazy answer, because I think what we pride ourselves in is mastering the basics. Right. So I think we put so much emphasis on mastering the basics that we don't have any non-obvious goofy trick that's out there, I would say. So, which I think rolls well into the next question from Emily that says, as a brand new clinician, it can be overwhelming with all the different rabbit holes that go down. PRI, FRS, McKenzie. What's your advice on navigating that? I agree. Those are tough rabbit holes. I think if you're a new clinician and you're trying to go that deep into one system, I think you should take a big step back and again, master the basics. I think that's an important concept. What I always tell young clinicians is get your first job. And then what I want you to do is I wanted to do an assessment on yourself, like, you know, a few months, 3 to 6 months down the road. And I want you to say, like, okay, who am I working with the most, right? I don't want you to take a FRS course and you're only working with total knee replacement Medicare patients, right? Like, I want you to take an audit of who you're working with the most and what you feel least comfortable with. Right. So I want you to ask yourself, what don't I like? Is it a joint? Is it a diagnosis? Is it an activity like a sport? And then I want you to kind of work on those first. Those are the things that you're working with every day, because then you're going to get comfortable and your confidence is going to go through the roof. Right. And then as a PT, you're going to feel a whole lot better about yourself. If you want to get fancy down the road and start going down some of those rabbit holes, go nuts. Right. But I would say, I think all you're going to do is confuse yourself early on, master the basics. Awesome. All right, let's see. Derek asks, what are your guys' thoughts on using a dynamometer to do manual muscle testing so you have more objective values? What do you guys think? Do we use a dynamometer? Kevin, what do you think? Let's hear you on a dynamometer. Do you use a dynamometer?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's crucial. I think when I was working in my first job, it was something that we didn't have access to, and I was doing a lot of manual muscle testing. And I think if you're working with a certain type of patient who's looking to get back to a high level of activity, especially, maybe coming off surgery, or, we see a ton of baseball players who we have to determine, how tired they are from throwing throughout the course of the season. It gives us some objective data to make a better clinical decision. So, as far as that stuff, yeah. And then I think, the post-op ACL, other post-ops, it's kind of a no-brainer. I think if there's one piece of equipment that you should invest in early on, if you want to see an active population, it's probably a dynamometer.
I like it. If you're not measuring, you're guessing, right? And I always talk about this, but we have some unpublished research on the shoulder that shows that you can have a 85% strength, so a 15% strength deficit, and still get a 5 out of 5 on a manual muscle test. It took us to about 84% for us to start detecting a 4 out of 5 on a manual muscle test. So for me, that's pretty clinically relevant. If you're 12% strong, I want to get that stronger. I can only imagine what that number is for the knee, by the way. It's probably way more, right? In the knee. That's just for the shoulder. So, all right, let's shift gears. Let's go to David Fitting. We have a brave hand raised. So I'm going to try to unmute you. Let me see, David, what do you got for a question for us tonight on the show?
Just had a 12-year-old kid today that came in with a ACL reconstruction, medial meniscus repair, blew it up on his trampoline at home, apparently, not even doing a fun trick. My question is his graft. So I asked his mom what the graft was, because that was done. I live in Northwest Arkansas. It was done down in Little Rock. And she said they used a IT band autograft. It's my first one to see of that. So I'm just kind of wondering if you guys have seen that, maybe what your outcomes that you've seen on that is, and is there anything to watch even in recovery, lateral agility and things like that, because he does try to play soccer, so he's going to try to work back to that, and just kind of wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that stinks. Trampolines are like death traps, huh? They're like, I feel like a PT made trampolines and sold them to the public. Oh yeah, sorry, Dave. I'm sorry. Tumble tracks are very safe. They're different than that. But Len,
sponsored by Tumble Track. Thanks.
Len, you want to knock this one out of the park real quick? What's your experience with IT band and 12-year-olds?
Yeah, I've seen, being back in Boston now, being home, children's hospital does them a bunch. So I've seen some, and it not my favorite to rehab.
Yeah, exactly.
I prefer if they had an autograft, like a hamstring, which is what I'm used to seeing in a young population, that 10, 12. I've seen a bunch of 10, 12-year-olds who've had a hamstring autograft. So when I came here, I had to figure out what was going on. So they keep the distal IT band attached, and they snip it proximally, and then they send it over the top of the femur and kind of create this. It's almost like a lateral extra-articular tenodesis, like an LET. And so because the growth plates are open, they did that. With that, our protocol that the docs use at Children's was very conservative and slow. And so a bunch of knees didn't progress as well as I wanted them to. And the ones I can think of, I wouldn't say all of them retore, but there was a good amount, more than I would like to see, that eventually retore. Now, is it an age thing where they got back too quickly, or they grow and they outgrow that procedure? I don't know. The research doesn't say it's a bad procedure, but the ones that I had seen, I wish there was an alternative. Go slowly with them, but they will heal fast because they're 12 years old. So I kind of treat it like a soft tissue graft. Go slow, and they're gonna want to go faster than they're supposed to. But kind of treat it like a conservative hamstring, I would say, and watch the lateral stuff, like you said.
I like that. And I would say that's probably the big, what to watch out for is that they're young, they heal fast. They're going to probably feel pretty good quick, but we want to go a little slower with that graft because we're a little bit worried in the long term. But great stuff. All right, let's take a break. Let's do another prize. Who wants a prize? Rallying support. All right, next one we're going to do, because we promised, was the Smart Tools. So what we have for Smart Tools. So Smart Tools is a great company. They have instrument assisted tools, but they also have smart cuffs for blood flow restriction training. And they're one of our favorite ones. We use them in the clinic every day. We have a bunch of different ones, but we tend to gravitate to these because we can give personalized pressure, which I think is huge, right? If you're going to do BFR, you want personalized pressure, or you're just guessing. Same thing with handheld dynamometer. So you can easily just press a button and it auto inflates to the right pressure that you want. They're really comfortable, great size. People really like them. They're durable for us. So a Smart Cuffs BFR system we give away. Again, retail value is, a few $100s. Len, are you ready for this one? For the drum roll? I wish we had sound effects. Yeah, that was weird, but that was fine. All right, let's see. Number 169.
Oh, I am there. We have Kelly Lewis. Kelly Lewis.
Congratulations, Kelly Lewis. We will find a way to find you probably tomorrow and give you your prize. It'll be amazing. But Kelly Lewis, you get that Smart Tools. I think that's you're going to really like that. That's awesome. If you did not win the Smart Tools, don't forget, if you use coupon code Reinold, just my name, no H, just because I know everybody puts an H, Reinold, 10% off those cuffs too for my peeps. So as a listener to the podcast, you get 10% off those smart cuffs as well. So check those out. All right, next up, we're gonna do the Anchor Pro device, which is probably one of my favorite new devices on the market. I think this thing's mind blowing, but let's get back to some questions, right? I learned this from reality TV. You always want to like they're opening that last case on Deal and No Deal, and then they go to commercial, right? So we're going to go back to questions and get going there. But let's see here. Edgardo says, hello, I'm recently starting a sports residency with an ortho surgeon, uses a 6-month return to sport protocol to all athletes. Wow. I'm concerned about this approach, agree, and all the evidence out there related to high risk of re-injury on return to sport before 9 to 12 months. Any recommendations? So Edgardo, I'd say big question, right? And because I'm going to assume we're talking ACL. So why don't we keep this question to ACL? I apologize if you're asking for more. I would imagine on other procedures and injuries that they're going to have different timelines, but who wants to jump in on this one? And 6 months return to play after an ACL. I've done it. I know Len's done it. I bet you a lot of other people on here, and we had quite
4 months.
Yeah, we have had plenty at 4 months and quite a bit successful too, to be honest with you. I mean, they're successful at the time, but what would you say here? Let's pretend we're not going just against the doctor here in answering that question, but do we think 6 months is too early, or do we think 9 to 12 is a magic number? I don't know, Len. I feel like you're up to date on this research. We just talked about this at ICUS a little bit. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, 6 months is early. It really is. I mean, some can. There is a paper that just came out that the quicker somebody's quads come back, the more likely they are to re-tear their ACL. So it's the ones that, may even look strong, but biologically they're probably not ready. And you don't even consider the neurocognitive aspect of it, where their brain is just not communicating well with their knee. So even though they have a strong quad and they're passing some of the tests, they just may not be able to react appropriately when they get out in a position where they have to respond and not think. And so in rehab, we don't have that good ability to test that. The neurocognitive stuff that Dustin Grooms is putting out in his crew in Ohio, and others around the world doing that stuff. So I would say 6 months is too early. I'd be shocked if this doctor was actually doing this and sticking by this and having successful outcomes with it, because it'll catch up. I'm going to guess the beginnings of it begin at 6 months. And they don't get back till 9 months to a year. It would be my guess, but yeah.
I like it. What do you think, Dave?
I just want to throw out that I think ACLs are the perfect example of such a massive variability and how long it can take. You can have someone who literally has a clean quote unquote ACL, very small bone bruise, no meniscus. They're super fit before they get injury. They're super motivated. They really want to do it. And it's probably can go back pretty quickly if they're not going back to a super, high intensity or high agility, speed and agility sport. And you have someone on the other side who has an ACL, has a huge bone bruise, has meniscus pathology, doesn't have a training age beforehand, doesn't know how to work out really. They want to go back to some crazy stuff that they're doing. And it's so completely different in my mind about how long it's going to be. And on paper, they see 6 months and they're all right, I'm ready to go. But you start getting them going, they don't really want to do their exercises. It doesn't go well. They have a cyclops lesion, they're behind, and then their strength test is terrible at 5, 6 months, but they're ready to go, quote unquote. And I think it's one of the areas that I think it's just so variable that you have to be really kind of thinking on your feet sometimes.
Love it. Awesome. All right, let's see. Next question comes from Mark. He says, what are some suggestions to maximize the student experience in a clinical rotation? Interesting one. So let's see. I don't know who wants to jump in on that one. Maybe Kevin or somebody. Kevin, I know you're helping Mike a little bit with revamping some of our student internship stuff that we do at Champion. But what's some of the biggest pieces of advice you'd give a student that's about to start with us at Champion?
Yeah, I think our system's definitely unique in that we have a lot of students at once. So I think kind of giving the student a lay of the clinic and kind of how we operate, doing our hands-on manuals and stuff like that. I think anytime you have downtime, just talking to the student, getting to know them, kind of trying to be friendly with them and make them feel like they're part of the clinic, I think is the first big step. And then trying to teach them all the basics that we start with. Like, I think early on at Champion, some of the things we need them to master are the manuals, using a goniometer, performing some of our manual therapy techniques. So whether they're with you while you're treating a patient and you're giving them some pointers, or you have some downtime and you're practicing things with them, or they're practicing on each other and you're observing and giving feedback, I think any of that stuff. So we try between all of us, all the clinicians. I mean, we always have students, either helping us or observing us or practicing things. So it's a fun place to be. It does take a little time, I think, to get into the flow, but we try to make that as seamless as possible.
Have a curriculum.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
have a curriculum. You know what the patients you see, so have it. I mean, every student should have a curriculum. Like week 1, you're gonna do this. Week 2, this. Have research articles that are important to what you're gonna be doing and seeing and teaching. So just have a curriculum.
Yeah, I like that because, a lot of people that you become a clinical instructor as a PT and you don't know a ton about like leadership and stuff. You're a PT, so you want to share your advice. But I think the best thing you can do is be organized, right? And actually have like an onboarding process. Like, what would you like as a new employee, right? If you went and worked at Starbucks, you're going to have a really big on-ramp session to learn how to do their systems, right? I think that's the same way we try to approach it at Champion. So I think that's great. Let's see. Colin asks, you talk a lot about keeping up with the recent literature. What's some of your strategies of implementing this if you're in a busy clinic? I'll jump in with mine and maybe we'll go quick and see who else has anything to add, but I'm still old school. So there's little things called RSS feeds, right? Like, I don't even know if people know those exist, but they're still there. No, RSS feeds they're still there. They're just hidden. You don't know they're there. But I use a service called Feedly, Feedly, Feedly. But what Feedly does is it allows me to put any RSS feed. So each journal has like a table of contents that you can get updates with, and I read them all in one platform. You could do that. You can set up some like searches in PubMed. I know like if something cool comes out. So, for me, if there's something on like baseball overhead athlete, I'll get an email. Some of my, friends that I follow, like Lenny and, Dan Lorenz, Tim Heckman, these people that are on the call right now. Like if an article comes out with somebody I know, I'm probably going to get an update. So I would say subscribe to some PubMed things. You can follow table of contents with like a feed reader like that. What else you guys do? And who uses social media? Is Twitter a good way to stay up with current research?
I do.
Yeah.
But to me, it's a great way. You just got to follow the right people who talk about things that you're into and who put stuff out, like myself or other people, and just and that's how I get a ton of stuff, is believe it or not, from Twitter.
Yeah, because I feel like Twitter is very timely, right? So it's usually conversations about something that just came out. So I thought that was good. Let me see. Kenneth says, what were your key takeaways from attending AOSSM this past week? Altitude is real. That would be my number one takeaway. Lenny and I didn't sleep a wink. We were roommates. We didn't sleep a wink in Colorado. It was terrible, and something to keep in mind. So I don't know if I had some big takeaways. I think the biggest thing for me for attending AOSSM is you see some like cutting edge research. It was really cool to hear the physicians talk about some of the newer procedures that are being done, like internal bracing for Tommy John, and some of the different techniques for ACLs that we're looking at. For me, I wouldn't say there's one big thing, but I think AOSSM is like the future. And I think that's the thing. You're getting a lot of like updated, like cutting edge evidence before it's even published that is out there, which I think is pretty neat. So pretty good one. Let's see. Okay, so Zach flips the question. What kind of advice would you give to a student that's about to start a clinical in a few months? All right, so Kevin talked about how we make the student experience good. Do we just reverse hack that conversation? Is it the same as the residency where you just learn as much as you can? But what advice would you give to somebody just starting on clinicals? Who wants to jump in on that one? I want to hear from Jonah too on what advice you would give a brand new strength and conditioning intern, because again, I think that's applicable as well. You've been an intern yourself, and now you're all the way to a director level position. So it was amazing. So, but Dave, what do you got? You want to start with that, and then we'll go to Jonah.
I think if you find a clinical that you're really wanting to soak up as much knowledge as you can, like I think champion is often like the third clinical and they really want to get as much, like I really think you should try to do all that you can to like commit all of your possible like time to it, right? So I think like, yes, you could come in and just like treat the patients and then leave and stuff, but like there's so much information at champion, for example, that you could sit down on internships, you could shadow for an extra hour on the strength floor, you could come in early and like try to get to the con ed drive. Like I think if you're really serious about making like that clinical become something you want to replicate in your clinic, like you should kind of like commit like your life for those 3 months to it. Not like, don't do anything fun, but like you can get in there 12 to 13, 14 hours a day. Like you should definitely do it. And I think like that's who gets the most out of it, is the person who's trying to soak up everything, not just like barely getting through the, the 6 or 8 hours around the clock or whatever.
Yeah, I remember the end of the workday, the Gabenator had like he had like workout clothes like under his PT clothes that they would just rip off like Superman, and you'd be out in the gym coaching for 6 more hours a night. I remember those days. Take advantage of your facility and maximize everything, right? That's one of the reasons why we do take some local students, but I'll be honest with you, sometimes the local students are so focused on getting back to their apartment and their friends that it's the students that travel across country that commit themselves to coming in and learning and geeking out the whole time. They're great. Jonah, what do you got? What would you tell a strength intern that's about to start?
I'm definitely echoing everything Dave said, just getting involved as much as you can. I think the other big piece is knowing what you want to get out of it before you get there. So doing that research, knowing what the clinic you're going to or what the strength and conditioning facility you're going to is really good at, knowing kind of like what you were talking about of getting that self-audit done of, especially if you have some experience, it's your third clinical, say you don't know soft tissue as well, or on the strength side, like you're really good at coaching the lifts, but you're not so good at coaching speed and power things, and put your best efforts into spending as much time on those things as you can. And then also when you do leave, trying to spend some time reading on those things that you're having a challenge with, so that you're not going up to your instructors and asking them really basic questions, but you can go up with, hey, I was reading about this in this book last night. It's something I've been noticing on the gym floor. What are your thoughts? How can I get better at that? Yeah, I think that
awesome.
kind of.
Yeah. Great advice. All right. Well, I'm going to start flying through some of these. These are good. So Ryan asks, curious on your thoughts of using Nmes in post-op rehab for knee surgeries. Yep. I think we use it in all our knee surgeries. So yep, we're big fans of Nmes. We also use biofeedback as well. So, using those two, we just go Nmes for a little bit when they don't have volitional control, and then kind of progress to biofeedback as they're starting to progress and do better. I like that. Let's see. Matthew says, thoughts on vibration training. Who's it most appropriate for, and why would you add it for other types of training? I'd say we don't use vibration training like a big force plate that we stand on. I've seen like those force plates out there. We don't do that, but we are big fans of the vibration guns. We use them in our gym to neuromodulate some tone, some pain. Even it feels great. You can get some improvements in mobility, and even sometimes with PT. So I think those are good. All right, let's go. I'm going to find something we can keep going deeper on. But what are some of your conservative interventions for addressing arthrofibrosis limiting knee flexion after being immobilized for years? Okay, that's a heck of a caveat there, Philip. I like that. I like that. So I like it. So what are your thoughts on all right, so what are our thoughts on improving a really stuck knee that's been there for a long time? What do you think, Dan Pope? You want to start this? I've seen you like sumo wrestle some knees. I feel like in the gym sometimes. How do you work on a chronically stiff knee?
You got to be very aggressive and forceful. I'm just kidding.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I would think you would probably start it like you would any other type of mobilization. Start with some gentle range of motion. I think frequency is going to be very important. So multiple times throughout the course of the day, doing range of motion. I would also consider using low load, long duration, multiple times a day. If you're trying to make some changes to that tissue that are long lasting, probably need at least around 60 minutes worth of low load, long duration every single day. Just being very, very persistent over the course of time and seeing if you're making progress, so measuring, remeasuring, and seeing if you're progressing. If not, you can always add more. So
Love it. I think that's a great way to answer it. Let's see. Todd says, any thoughts on managing a D3 right-hand pitcher with calcific UCL and common flexor tendon, probably tear, if I would guess. Man, if you have a college person with a calcific UCL, you're getting close. So I would leave it as that, right? So I would, obviously once they're out of pain, you can start trying to get back into a throwing progression again, but I'll just leave it as they're getting close. I know you're trying to manage it for the coming year. Oh, so you just shut them down for next year? That's going to stink. What I would say is don't sit tight and let them rest for months. I would challenge this injury this summer so that way you know if it's going to work or not, because I think there's a solid chance it doesn't, and I'd rather know in the fall so you can have surgery in the fall and just miss one season and not wait till next February and miss 2 seasons. That would be bad. Let's see. Morgan's got a good twist on that last question. If you have a patient lacking knee range of motion, do you start the session with flexion or extension based exercise? What do you think, Dan?
I usually start with extension. If you have the time to do this, what I like to do is start with extension, gain the range of motion as best you can, then do a bunch of functional exercises that involve extending the knee so you can try to reinforce that. And then if you have some time at the end, you'd focus a little bit more on flexion and then maybe some flexion-based exercises. But I think early on, you're going to have a lack of extension, and that's going to be more pressing, and it's going to be something that is going to be needed more for almost all movements. End range knee flexion is not really used as much in function, depending on how stiff you are, but the extension is extremely important. So that first, and then followed up by flexion at the end.
Love it. All right. You know what I think it's time for? Another prize. Are you ready, Len? Are you ready? All right. This time we have an Anchor Pro. So if you haven't seen Anchor yet, I've been tagging it on Instagram and Twitter the last couple weeks talking about this. This thing is amazing. It's essentially a cable column like in the palm of your hand. And we got them at Champion and they blew us away. The gentleman that started the company, Isaac, came and visited us and he showed us this thing. It's literally it's nice, smooth resistance, goes up to like 60, 70 pounds or something like that. It's so simple and so easy in the palm of your hand for just like hundreds of dollars. It is the biggest no-brainer that I think every rehab clinic should buy and add to their treatment tables for things like knee extension and hamstring, that sort of thing, as well as so many other things you can do it. And I see the future of racks just having these attached to racks. So you have your big lifts and then you have like a cable column attached to the rack anytime. So anyway, we clearly like Anchor. They do a good job. So this Anchor Pro, this thing's $650 and they're giving one away for free for you guys. It's amazing. So Google, what do we have for a random number generator? We have, we're getting late. This is a late registration. So let's see, Lenny, number 675.
675. Yeah, I gotta scroll all the way down. Still going.
I think you can hit Command bottom arrow. Somebody has to teach Lenny Excel shortcuts.
All right. We have Ashley Early.
Ironically, not early to her registration, but I like that.
I think you said Hurley, but I like that. All right. Congratulations, Ashley. You get this Anchor. We'll hook you up tomorrow. Can't wait to get that to you. You're going to love it. And then we got one more coming up in a little bit. We get the M-Trigger biofeedback device, another thing that we love. So
just real quick, if anyone wants to purchase an Anchor, I have a discount code.
Yeah. What do we what do we got doing?
It's Dwesh SP10. They'll get you 10% off.
What's the SP stand for?
Sports Performance.
Oh, sweet.
Also, my
special person.
Is that your middle initial?
I don't have a middle name.
Okay. All right. Well, there we go.
My last name is Podale, so Peter. But I'll throw it in the chat for anyone interested.
That's awesome. Yeah, good idea. And what's that for 10% off? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, guys. So so check that thing out. That's awesome. All right, let's see. Corinne says, what neurocognitive skills do you utilize to return to sport, like blaze pods and stuff like that? When do you use those? Len, what are we using for blaze pod stuff now? All right, I just gave you the answer. We're using blaze pods. But Len, what are we doing for some neurocognitive stuff out there with blaze pods now?
Yeah, we're using blaze pods. It depends on where they are in the process. Early on, it's basic stuff, like literally just like balance stuff, responding to the blaze pod, or standing on one leg and having to respond to a blaze pod like up on a table. And then as they progress through the rehab, we just make it more complicated. I think the big thing is that they're not focused on the task that they're doing. So if not using the blaze pod, you don't have access to a blaze pod, you are talking to your athlete while they are exercising. So you are giving them math problems, you're giving them complicated stuff to do. You're challenging their mind while they're exercising. So no more of looking at a mirror and having them squat in a mirror. No more looking at their leg and tightening up their quad. We know that that does not facilitate a good outcome or get the brain wiring back to where it should be. They rely too much on the frontal lobe, and they need to rely more on the motor cortex. So you need to get complicated with them, meaning they do a leg raise when you say an odd number. They do a leg raise when you say an even number. They do something. They're doing a math problem while they're exercising, complicated math as they go on. And so that's part of the challenge of having them exercise and move and not think about it, because you're challenging their mind while they do it. And Blaze Pause is one way to do it.
That sounds terrible, Len. If you ever gave me a math problem like that to do, like in the middle of my putt or something like that on the golf course, I'd be very mad at you. All right, great. This might be my favorite question so far of the night from Allie. How do you find work-life balance? I like that. And she commented on us that we have brands outside, stuff like that. So Allie, I'm going to give you the two best pieces of advice for work-life balance. The first one I'm going to give you, and these are from experience that I think are very helpful, but the first one I'm going to give you is that I think work-life balance is a little bit of a false concept. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but I think how we apply it's wrong. It's just like exercises, right? You can apply things in a daily, a weekly, a monthly, or a set program type thing. Here's what I think of work-life balance. It's not every day. It's not every week. It's not every month. It happens at certain periods of time. So the first thing I would tell you is this: when you're young and you have less personal commitments, because man, life gets busy fast, right? Finally, you decide to, move in with your significant other. That's a big deal. That's going to take off some time of your day. Then you think it's a great idea to get a dog. Bad idea, right? That's going to take off some time of your day, right? Then you decide, let's get married. That's going to take off some time of the day. Then let's have kids. That's going to take off some time of your day. Then let's sign our kid up for every sport in the freaking world. That's going to take up some time of the day, right? And then next thing you know, there's no time left in the day. So the first thing I tell you is this: is stack your life early. If you want good work-life balance later in life when you need it, then I think you got to hustle a little bit more when you're younger. So keep that in mind. In your 20s, dig hard. And the more you dig, the more seeds you plant, the more you'll have some fruits of your labor when you're in your 40s. That's number one. Two, the other thing to keep in mind here with work life is I have these big cycles where I'll put my head down. I know Dave's the same way. He literally disappears off the face of the earth. But we work hard. And then we take off, right? So Dave's just like literally,
like 3 months I didn't exist.
Grinds for 3 months, and then we don't see him for 10 days, and we're like, is Dave okay? Did he get COVID? What happened to Dave? Right? And that's how we do work-life balance: is grind, and then take a week off, right? And one of the things that I used to do this early on with Champion, but I used to call it my quarterly sabbatical, like my like work from home sabbatical. But essentially what I do is I try to like work really hard for 3 months and then take a week where I do nothing. Literally nothing, like go home and watch TV, right? That's something that's weird to us, right? Like wake up on a Saturday morning and just have a cup of coffee and sit there, right? That's not what we do, right? So I would say think of it that way. So anyway, let me see here. Carrie, Julie asked, this is a good one: can you spell out what that pelvic health questionnaire was? Or maybe Lisa, you can add it to the chat box, or Julie, please. Let's see. Carrie Lynn says, any creative suggestions on getting better quad glute activation post-op? Okay, so he's got a patient that's 5 months patellar tendon. Seems like they hit a plateau getting quad. We'll keep it at quad activation. What do you guys do? Who wants to jump in on that? Quad activation that seems like it's not coming around volitional control. What do we do? Who wants to jump in? Yep, and I think you're right. We use NMES. What else? So Dan, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, just frequent motion. How often is he trying to use his quad, right? He's doing quad exercise every hour or more. The other thing I'd like to see is what is his knee extension range of motion like? Is he lacking any motion? That'll be another big one.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. You probably don't have full knee extension, which wouldn't allow your quad to contract. So get that motion going. And then the other thing could be persistent
biofeedback.
Yep, and then go biofeedback. I think that would be the way to go. I like that. Let's see, Kevin and Laura together as a team. I assume that's just your Zoom name. But with respect to return to sport, what are the metrics you'd recommend to assess readiness for your return to sport? Man, there's a million of those. It really depends on your sport. So I'd say that's a big question, Kevin and Laura. It really depends on your sport. But I would say this: if you have a specific sport that you are working with, I would do a very specific search for that. And I think what you'll do is you'll find some of those scales that are out there that are applicable to you. There's some general athletic ones, and then there's some sports specific ones. So let's see. Cam asks, where do you guys stand on return to sport, sport specific post surgery training? Is this something us as clinicians should be responsible for? Do we instill enough faith and trust in our athletes that they're ready to get back to more intense movements? So Kim, I'm going to say no. And that's why Dewesh and Jonah are on this call right now. And that's why we have a whole sports performance gym affiliated with us at Champion. Is I don't think an athlete can just go from rehab and back into the game. I think there needs to be this transitional period where they're in the gym and they're training like an athlete again, but with a really smart program. I think that's a good way of saying it, right? Let me see. Yeah, I like that. Dawn asks, I have a few patients that had mild COVID infection, but now are long haulers. They're experiencing fatigue, brain fog, pain, other mild symptoms 1 to 4 times a week. Have you seen any of this in your practice? And what are some of the main things you do to help them? I'll jump in on that and say, I haven't had a long hauler as a patient in a while. But I did more so like that first summer, I think, with COVID. And you know what? It just took time for them. And you know what happened is if you're an athlete and you're a long haul athlete and you get into your season, I found like it was really hard for them to ever catch up in that season. So it kind of took the off season to kind of reset, get healthy. The other thing that I thought was interesting is I do have some anecdotal reports from people that if they got COVID and they were a long hauler and then they got the vaccine or the booster, that they had some significant improvements, but I certainly don't want to debate that online. So please don't tweet at us. Anybody else have any experience with that? Anybody have any long haulers?
I haven't had a long hauler, but I had a really impressive like return to rowing plan recently. It was like she's a rising college freshman, so pretty young, had COVID really bad, like really bad. So super concerned with her returning to rowing. So she was in the boat with a pulse ox for her finger, was watching her heart rate the entire time she was rowing, taking her wake up heart rate, like just like monitoring herself so that she didn't overdo things in those early stages of getting back to stuff to create the like long haul symptoms, which I thought that was really cool, really impressive.
Love it. Let's see. Chris says best budget dynamometer. I feel like that's an oxymoron, but the dynamometer we're using now and really loving at Champion is the new Vald Dynamo, right? Is that what it's called? Dynamo from Vald. So really neat handheld dynamometer for a few reasons, but one, you can measure both push and pull, which is kind of cool, right? Some of them are usually just push or some of them are just pull. This device has both. It can also do grip strength. It can also do range of motion, which we haven't even really tapped into enough yet at Champion. And more importantly, all the info gets inputted into a nice cloud app, which is great because you can see your data over time. So I would say that I think they're all around the same price. So I don't think you're looking for a budget dynamometer. I think you're looking for one that's really good.
I think also the podcast you put out with Scott Morrison recently, listen to that one.
Yeah, agree. That was a good one. I like that. Let's see. Any tips or text? So Franco asks, any tips or technique to activate or recruit the ankle dorsiflexors following COVID? We'll talk in general. Dorsiflexors. Anybody got any tricks up their sleeve on dorsiflexors? I know, we've been looking at some new things, but anybody got any tips on how to get ankle dorsiflexion going? Somebody jump in, guys. Dan. Yeah, you don't have to wait.
Yeah, I think it's one of those areas that we don't really learn how to exercise. I'd be kind of curious, like which movements you're kind of doing. You know what I mean? I love using a slant board. You don't even need to use a slant board, but just leaning against the wall. Heels are going to be on the ground, like straight, toes up in the air, lowering the toes down, tapping and pulling back up again. Do this on a slant board. It's great. You can actually do tib raises just like you do a calf raise, right? On a slant board, except your heels are down and your toes are going up. You call them toe raises as opposed to heel raises. You can do a single legged. There's all sorts of different exercise variations, but I think first question I would ask is, how do you train them? Are you using a good variety of exercise to get the job done? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the other question too with the knee is like, do you have good ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, right? Dwesh, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say one little tool that we purchased was the little tib bar. But I would definitely echo what you said. Like, do you have good dorsiflexion range of motion first? If you do, and you have a lot of motion that you got to learn how to control or have ownership of, then I would probably strengthen it. But there's a thing called the tib bar that you can just load up and do like anterior tib concentric movements on it. So it's an option.
And I was just
Nmes too, stim.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah. And I would just say don't underestimate some of the basic things like retro walking and stuff like that. I think that would, just to really lock in those types of things. So awesome. All right, let's do one more prize. We've talked about it a few times about using biofeedback, but we also have an M trigger device. If you haven't seen an M trigger device, this is a really neat device that provides biofeedback. It's just like, again, this little teeny thing that connects to your phone and it's super affordable. Biofeedback is one of those things that was like really, really cool like decades ago and something that we all used. And then I think insurance stopped reimbursing it or something like that. And then it the big companies stopped making it. But biofeedback's amazing because you can put it on different muscle groups and do an exercise and you can see things like, so oftentimes like you may put it on like one lead on the hamstring and one on the glute max and have somebody work on hip extension and you're trying to get them to use more glute max than hamstring or maybe glute max and low back, right? There's so many different ways you can use biofeedback. So the M trigger device is really neat device that we have, and we're giving one away tonight. This thing is a retail value of $449. And Len, we have the random number generator from the Google, number 407.
407. I am
Google
there. Google it. We have Emma Gusinski. Emma Gusinski.
Nice. Congratulations, Emma, on your M trigger. We'll get you one of those. And again, same thing. If you missed out, we do have a coupon code Reinold for 10% off on the M trigger as well, which is pretty cool. But these things are nice. I think they're a good addition to the clinic. Super affordable for biofeedback. You should check that out. Let me see. I think, I think that's a wrap. What do you guys think? Was that fun? Did you guys have a good time? I think there's a good amount of people that still have their cameras on an hour and a half into this. So I appreciate it. I saw a couple people. Liz dozed off at one point. I caught you. That was there. I see some of the old faces in there. Chuck's always around answering some good stuff. I like seeing you in there. Tons of past students. You guys see all the past students in there and say hi to them. I think it's really cool to see all you guys in there. That's awesome. So really appreciate you guys, joining us for this. And the last 299 of these, right? Because I know you've listened to them all. So really appreciate it. Keep it going. We'll keep our promise to you. If you keep asking questions, we'll keep answering them. I think that should be like our trademark thing, right? That's a t-shirt, Neurobiochemical. And then on the back, if you keep asking questions, we'll keep answering them. Hashtag the Gaminator. But really appreciate it. You guys are the best. Thanks so much for joining us on there. Again, if you have questions like this, head to micron.com, click on that podcast link, and you can keep asking away. Please head to iTunes or whatever the heck it's called now and Spotify. By the way, Spotify, side note for those still listening to this episode, Spotify, the percentage of people listening to podcasts on Spotify are skyrocketing. Just looking at some of our statistics. If you haven't listened to
video, that's why. That's part.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, listening to podcasts on Spotify has been pleasant compared to Apple. It's been awesome. So anyway, good for more career advice for you guys. But we appreciate it. We'll stop talking now. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care. Have a good night. Bye. Bye.